All right, so this video will focus on 7.2. And if we look at square roots, the square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 64 is 8, but there's a negative sign before it, so it's negative 8. The square root of 49 over 81 is 7 over 9. The square root of 225 is 15, but there's a negative sign before it, so it's negative 15. The square root of 121 is 11. And then finally, 144 over 169 is going to be 12 over 13. So how are cube roots different than these square root things? Basically what it means is instead of square roots where we have a number times a number, a cube root is a number by a number by a number. And a very good example of this is actually taking a unit cube, or just a cube in general. And if I look at this one, for instance, I have a volume of 343. But let's start off with something smaller. Let's say that I have a cube root of 8. Well, that means what times what times what equals 8. And I know that 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1. And 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. And 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. And so on. And I can keep on making these to make this easier for myself. But I want to figure out what equals 8. And I have it already. It's 2 times 2 times 2. So when I look at that one, the cube root of 8 equals 2. To put it in perspective of this drawing, what they're saying is if I have a cube and they all have the same side length and my volume happens to be 8, that means that this side is 2, this side is 2, and this side is 2. And what we're going to do in this activity is then go through and figure out, well, if the volume is 8, let's say, 8 cm cubed, what would be the surface area? Well, I want to figure out the area of each face, right? Well, if I think about the face for a second, I know that this face here is 2 by 2, and that equals 4. So just one face is 4 pieces. Now, if I think about a cube, there's actually 6 faces, right? One here, one behind it, one on top, one on bottom, one on left, one on right. So to figure out surface area, I would take 4 times 6. And when I do that, I get 24. And that would be units or centimeters squared. And that would be the surface area when the volume is 8. For this one, it takes 343, and what times what times what? Well, it'll be 7. This one here is what times what times what equals 27? Well, that equals 3. I figured that out before. So each side length is 3. For 125, it would be 5 times 5 times 5. Now, it's the same thing when numbers are smaller than 1. So if I look here and I think about 1/27, 1/8, it means what times what times what equals 8? Well, it would be 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. That all equals 1/8. So that's what each side length is equal to. For this one with a decimal, I could do a couple of things. I could say 0.1 times 0.1. Let me try this again. 0.1 times 0.1 times 0.1. And when I do that, I get 0.001. And that's my answer. I could also think about it as 1/10, right? 1/10 times 1/10 times 1/10, and that all equals 0.001. This here is showing how to do prime factorization. So if I have 216, let's just do this really fast. Remember, we did the same thing with squared, right? But with square root or cube root, we'll take 216, and I will just take it, and I'll think about what I can divide this by, right? So I can divide by 2 for sure, and I'll have 108. And then I can divide that by square root 2, and I have 54. And I can take that and do the square root 2, and I have 27. Now, if you remember, 27 was already a cube root. I think it was 3, but we'll keep on going. And I'll say cube root 3, and I have cube root 9, or square root 9, then square root 3, then square root 3, then square root 3. And basically, since it's a cube root, right, I have to look for 3 of them in a row. So I'll circle all, if I have 3, like 1, 2, and 3, that will just equal a 2. And then 1, 2, and 3, that will just equal a 3. So if I multiply these, 2 times 3 equals 6. And if I take 6 times 6 times 6, I get 216. So So the cube root of 216 is 6. So now we're going to go through here and figure out 64,000, and I believe that's 40, 40, 40, and 40. This one here is just 1/6. If I look at these here, this would be 2. This one here would be -3. And this one here would be 4, or 1/4. Now we're going to be evaluating expressions. And basically what we're doing, and I kind of don't like how this is drawn up because it gives the answer right away, but you think about this cube root as being in parentheses. So I do this one first, and this would be -6, right? So then it would be 2 times -6, which is -12, and then -3. And so I have a total of -15. This one here, this cube and this, so the cubed and the cube root will cancel out. So this will just be 125 plus 21. And I get 146 altogether. So we'll go through some review now. The cube root of 1 is just 1. The cube root of -343. The cube root of 27 over 1,000. Evaluate this expression. I think there's one more. So if I look here, this is 1. I think this here is 7, right? -7. This is going to be -3 over 10. This here I have to do the inside first. So I have 2 times -4, which is -8. 18 minus 8 is 10. These cancel out, so I'll have 64 minus 43 really, and I'll have 21, but it'll be -21 because this absolute value is greater. This here is going to be 64, is it 8? Is it 8? 8 minus, or 8 times 5 is 40, minus 19 is 21. So there are all the answers that I have. This one here, we're actually going to plug in the 192. So I'm going to do this one because this is a good one. So I'll have 192 over 4. And then I'll say plus the cube root of 192 over 3. Now remember, this little cube root thing is like parentheses. So I do it first. And I'll rewrite this. I'll have 192 over 4. And then I'll say plus. And then this is the cube root. And if I think of 192 divided by 3, I don't know what that is offhand. Let's just look. So if I take 192 divided by 3, I get 64, right? So I'm going to go 64. The cube root of 64 is going to be 4. So, and then plus 192 divided by 4. So I have to figure out what 192 divided by 4 is. So I have 48. So let's rewrite this whole thing real fast. So I'll have 48 plus 4 equals 52. And that's my answer. So let's go through and see that's how it works. There we go. All right. And one more that I'd like you to go through and fill out. So I plug in the 64 here. Remember to do the cube. So 8 times 64 and then do the cube root of it. And then plus 64. This here, we know that b equals -3. So plug this in so it's -27. So this would be -3, but then it's a negative. So it's a +3. And then this would be -6. So that would be 3, I think. Let's look. Yep, -3. So -3 and 72 are my answers. And here's the last one that I want to do. Find the surface area of the baseball case. I know that the volume is 125, so I have to figure out the side lengths, right? And what times what is 125. So I'm looking for the cube root of 125. And that would equal 5, right? So each one of my little boxes here, my faces, is equal to 25 because of the fact that it'll be 5 times 5. So this is 25. So I'll put down 25 here, units squared. And I know that there's a total of 6 of those, right? So 25 times 6, and I get 150 units squared. And I guess it'd be inches squared in this case. So there is my answer. And that's for the lesson.